I now call on Deputy Gerry Adams, and the Deputy has 10 minutes.
I'm a bit disappointed that, as far as I can see, the Cathaoirleach is the only member of the Labour Party here in this chamber this evening. Because, say what we want about Fine Gael, it is deeply disappointing that Labour has aligned itself to this particular social charge. It was described in December, Minister, I don't know if you're aware of this, last year by the Minister of State for Health, Roisin Shortall, as little more than a working poor tax. She said it is a blatant and unjustifiable attack on the poor. Now, throughout the election campaign and since, I met many people who are under deep stress, people without work, elderly people, people trying to rear young families, people in negative equity, people in difficulties paying their mortgages. And people and other Teachtadála, and not just Sinn Féin Teachtadála, but other Teachtadála have talked of having exactly the same experience of meeting citizens in deep distress. And one young mother told me that she had a choice between paying a bill and paying for food. And of course, she paid for the food. These are the people that this tax hits the hardest. During that campaign, Sinn Féin said that we would campaign to abolish it. And we kick-started that campaign today. We shouldn't have to do this. There shouldn't have to be a campaign. In a republic, there shouldn't have to be motions like this coming into this chamber. So I am asking members of other parties to represent their constituents. You know, this isn't just about the economy. It's about the type of society that we live in. It's about the political choices that we make. And a bad Fianna Fáil government made bad decisions in support of or in deference to political and other elites. And those decisions obviously favoured the elites and not the citizens. And this social charge is essentially, as Pearse has said, a flat tax. It taxes everyone with an income above 16,000 pays it at the same rate of 7%. And even those who have as little as €17 a week are brought into the tax net. And Teachtadála here should just consider living on such a meagre sum. It breaches the fundamental principle of progressive taxation, that is, those who have the most should pay the most. Now, the government has promised a review of this tax, and the Minister for Finance said that this would be done for the budget in 2012 in a response here during the week. A review is not good enough. Mar dúirt Pearse ní cuireann sin bia an tabla. Agus na daoine a bhí mise can faoi na daoine bacht agus daoine eile tá siad faoi a lán brú tá siad strasál amach. So caithimid ará go hánsal gur corthimid stad an tax seo. The question sometimes is asked, I think simplistically, well, how would you raise revenue? We put forward a proposition for a third tax band for those earning over 100,000, and that, coincidentally, brings in 420 million, which is, 410 million euros, almost as much as the 420 million that comes in from the universal social charge, without the awful social consequences created by the universal social charge. And there has to be some way of starting to socially proof these matters. there has to be some way of looking at the effects of these laws that are brought in here. As far as I can see, and I have no evidence, and I'd be pleased if the Minister can prove me to the contrary, there's no evidence that this was even considered by the government, despite the fact that it was Labour Party policy right up until and into the middle of the general election, and they then U-turned on the issue. It's also bad economics. These people who are burdened and oppressed by this charge cannot afford to save money. They have to spend what they have to get by. So, given the punishing effect of all of this, small indigenous domestic businesses, which are absolutely vital to the regeneration of our economy and particularly to the re-employment of our people, will be hardest hit by deflationary policies by this. The need to focus in on the social needs, the economic needs, and the purpose of an economy, I think, is something which the government could, with some advantage, cogitate upon. Hitting these people the hardest. And my take on this is that the EU-IMF deal, which this government has sealed and bought into, that part of that deal is the austerity packages like this. So this is a government which is compliant and complicit in impoverishing even more the poorest people and people who would never have seen themselves as economically vulnerable until now. There is a better way to get the state out of the recession. We have outlined that in some detail. There is a better way of dealing with the IMF-EU deal, and I notice the government rhetorically, certainly here in Ireland, whatever they do in Europe, edging towards the Sinn Féin position. But a start of all of this comes back to the political choices. And there's a political choice to be made to get rid of this tax or to maintain this tax. Last thing I want to say is this. Society can divide, and the social consequences of this is that you get large, socially disadvantaged, discriminated against, cynical, sceptical people who have no sense of themselves. Out of that comes abuse, alcoholism, drug abuse, domestic violence, domestic abuse, low expectations, low educational attainment, and all the rest of it. These are the seeds. These are the seeds that you are sowing to once again widen the gap that the Taoiseach has quite rightly proclaimed as exists at this time between large sections of citizens and the political establishment. And that will be not just deepened, but deepened with dire social consequences, because you can be alienated from a political system and still be well educated, articulate, even wealthy.
The Deputy just is over 1 minute. Okay.
But when you are at the position where you're at the very, very bottom of the ladder with no hope of getting up, then I think that is bad for Ireland and bad for our people and bad for the project that we're trying to advance in this chamber. So I would call for deputies right across the political parties to vote with their heads and their hearts, not the party whip. Don't be ushered like sheep into the lobbies because you have the majority here in this chamber. Vote decently on this issue and vote to abolish this charge. Go on, Margaret.